I'm probably the most amateur person in this. So in this group, so it's appropriate that I would do something as simple as leaf shape, I thought. And I've never really gone through this process before. So I thought what I would do is I would get illustrations of leaf shapes. And I wanted to get one from New Mexico, which is this one. I call that the Big Green Book, which is Flora New Mexicano. And I wanted to get leaf shape from Colorado, but Weber and Whitman didn't illustrate them. But Bill Weber did an interactive key before he wrote the book. And in that key, there are all the leaf shapes that they refer to in the key. So I've set it up so that if Weber and Kelly have leaf shape, they're on the left. And then what I did was to try to get definitions of the leaf shape. And it's interesting that it's kind of hard sometimes I'm gonna get rid of that thing. Can I? Yeah, good. It's kind of hard sometimes um, to get a definition of the shape. Um, uh, and uh, and okay, so I'll leave that at that because it's just difficult to uh, to define what the shape is, and people do it differently. Different people do it differently. So what I did is I went through and I looked at the leaf shape and I thought I will go and just get examples of it, put it up, um, and um, and then I thought I guess I made the mistake of going after I had picked the species that showed that shape. I made the mistake of going into the flora of North America to see how they define that shape. And I've got the general definition up here, and then I have the BFNA um, uh, description of Brachythecium erythrhyzon. And you'll see that sometimes it's their definition is different than my guess at what that if that shape represented the overall definition. And I thought, well, I better not, I better make sure that they're all the same. And then I thought, no, it's better to show the difference because a lot of the definitions that you see in books and keys um, are are different depending on the key that you use. And they're also very often more than one word that describes it. And Brachythecium erythrhyzon is a good example of that. Um, the first shape is called lanceolate, and the lamina is the bryophyte word for leaf. Um, and it's generally defined as leaves that are 3 to 6 times longer than wide, widest below the middle, with a slightly convex sides tapering toward the tip. And you can see the convex sides here in Ceratodon purpureus. Um, but you don't really see that convex so much in Brachythecium. So this is pretty much the simplest shape. In BFNA, Ceratodon purpureus was described as being lanceolate, ovate lanceolate, or triangular lanceolate. And that's the other problem with picking a particular species to show you what a shape looks like, because the leaves vary depending on the plant, and sometimes they vary even um, on the same plant. Um, I guess like any other kind of plant. So, but this is lanceolate. The next one is ovate, and it's defined as being egg-shaped, broadest below the middle, so that if this was standing up, the egg shape is here, and then the thinner part is up here. 1 to 3 times longer than wide, with a slightly convex sides tapering toward the tip. And this when you see the convex sides, this one you don't. But it's still BFNA still calls it ovate. So that the convex is less important than the fact that it's kind of egg-shaped, it's short, it's fatter, and otherwise it's basically a squashed down lanceolate leaf. Okay, moving along, and then the last kind of lanceolate is linear lanceolate, and that's lance-shaped, greater than 6 times longer than wide, widest below the middle, so you see it's down in here and down in there, with slightly convex sides tapering toward the tip. Now, when you go, I didn't put, I think this was from BFNA, and they define it as lanceolate at the base, but acuminate above, which means that it comes to a long, thin point. I would call this linear lanceolate. And then I couldn't get a definition of the shape of Timia austriaca in BFNA, and I couldn't get it in the Flora neomexicana. So I went to Crum, who wrote about the Northeast flora, and he calls this abruptly lanceolate, which to me is not very helpful. I like linear lanceolate a lot better. One of the interesting things I found out in this process that Kelly, in his book and his keys, no, in the descriptions of the uh, the mosses in his book, very often doesn't even tell you what the leaf shape is. And I'm guessing, you can correct me, Kelly, since you're still here, I think, probably because they're photos. And there's nothing better than a photo or an illustration to show you the shape that they're talking about, rather than trying to do some kind of definition. Okay, so moving along, we go into oblong lanceolate, sometimes called ovate lanceolate. And all that is lanceolate with bowed out sides. So it's kind of fatter, and it runs. This is a better illustration of that. Rather than being wide at the bottom and then gradually getting smaller to the tip, it bows out in the middle. And this fontinalis is a good example of that. And in BFNA, they call it oblong ovate, ovate lanceolate, or suborbicular, which is nearly circular. And the only thing that I can think of that, I couldn't find any photos of Fontinalis antiparetica that was nearly circular, but maybe, in other parts of the world it is, or something like that. This is not quite as good an example of ovate lanceolate, because you would want that to kind of run along like that. But so oblong lanceolate, it's just bowed out sides a little bit. Now, the spatulate ones you saw because we saw um, Centrichia, and we saw the spatulate shape in Kelly's presentation, and it's basically shaped like a spatula, so like this, and spatulate. And it's interesting that, the two examples that I found were Centrichia and Tortula, because remember, if you're in Centrichia and you're coming to a dead end, you go to Tortula. That's something that I learned today. And this in BFNA in Tortula, they talk about oblong lanceolate. Oblong, and I looked up the meaning of oblong, and I just in a dictionary, an oblong is defined as being nearly rectangular, and I don't understand that, because in all of the mosses that I looked at that were oblong, they weren't square. Maybe it means that it's, I don't know. And then, or they said it's long elliptic. An elliptic just means that it's shaped like an ellipse. With Tortula, the leaves probably do oblong lanceolate and elliptic, so that they would be, more like an ellipse. They'll vary. All these things will vary. Next one is oblanceolate. Oblanceolate, the prefix OB means inverted or reversed. So that means that rather than the fatter part being at the base of the leaf, it's up near the tip, and that's where you get oblanceolate. So it's 6 times longer than wide. That's probably not true in this case, but yeah, 3 to 6 times longer than wide. But the widest point is above the middle. So remember, with lanceolate, the widest was below the middle. And that, in my experience, that's a really good way of saying, what's this leaf doing? Is it the fattest down here, the fattest in the middle, or the fattest at the tip? And that really define, that's one of the major definitions of being able to tell one leaf from another. In BFNA, they call this oblong ovate. It's sort of ovate, and the sides go out, so it's oblong. And in Centrichia ruralis, in this case, I probably didn't pick a very well. No, that's right. The widest point here is above the middle, but a different way of describing that is lingulate ovate, and we'll get to lingulate in a minute, which is
tongue shaped.
Yeah, it's tongue shaped. Um, so that's oblanceolate. Now we get into oblong elliptical or ovate lamina. Oblong is the definition of oblong is basically elongated oval. It's shaped like an ellipse, and an ellipse like the planets go on. The widest point is near the middle. So remember we were at the bottom, and then the middle, and then the fattest among the top at the top. A couple of examples of this is Entodon concinnus, and this is BFNA calls this oblong ovate, and Pollia cruda, and the BFNA says this is either lanceolate to elliptic. So, these leaves will vary on the same plant or different plants. But the widest point is near the middle, and that's there. This is with these rather than just being slightly ovate. These are much fatter in the middle. Triangular or deltoid is shaped like a triangle, so that's pretty easy. I had a really hard time finding a really good example of that, like Trypanoscletus, um, because this is clearly shaped like a triangle. Um, uh, One of the definitions um, talks about the widest part being just above the base. So rather, this wouldn't be ovate because ovate would be the widest part would be about a third of the way up the leaf. In this case, the widest part is just above the base. And then I came across Campyllium stellatum, um, which BFNA calls rounded triangular. And I thought, well, that was kind of interesting because it's, this is, I guess, kind of triangular, but I think that the main point is that the widest point is way down here, and then it goes up to a point, which, as you can see in the examples, the widest point is down here, but it's a straighter line to the point rather than concave. But BFNA calls it rounded triangular. Okay, so here we are with a lingulate lamina. Um, uh, I'm sorry, ligulate lamina because it ligulate and lingulate. And the definition of this is that it's thinly lingulate. I should have done lingulate first, but it's basically strap shapes. It's the sides are parallel almost all the way to the tip, and it's thin all the way. In the big green book, um, uh, the illustration, you might call that sort of oblong lingulate, um, but here are a couple of examples of these. And then the lingulate is tongue-shaped. So this one, oh, I'm sorry. This one is thinly tongue-shaped, and this is tongue-shaped. And in these, in lingulate lamina, very often they're wider, a little bit wider toward the tip, as you see in Alonia. And this shape did not appear in uh, Florida, New Mexico. And, maybe because it's really, you might just need ligulate. I mean, if you use ligulate for thinly ligulate or fat ligulate, you could get away with it. And that's obviously what Kelly did. And then another one which appeared in Weber but did not appear in the Flora, New Mexico is ovate ligulate, defined as being egg-shaped below the middle and ligulate above the middle, so that the sides are parallel up here, but it's egg-shaped down in the bottom, an ovate base. And, it's when I tried to find examples of this, couldn't find really good examples. So maybe that's why Kelly didn't put it in there because um, in the illustration, it's very clearly very wide at the bottom, and then ligulate at the top. And this is as close as I could get to that, Centrichia and Schistidium. And then obovate is ovate, but it's flipped over, shaped like an egg. This is the top of the leaf, but the widest part is the top, rather than being. Well, this is almost ovate, um, and this is a better example of obovate because it's an egg, but it's egg with a rounded part, the most rounded part at the tip. And in BFNA, they call Rhizominium obovate to broadly elliptic. So elliptic, but broadly elliptic. And then orbicula are lamina that are almost round. So this, I don't know, you get pretty close to almost round with this. These are a little bit more almost round. And again, I had a hard time finding examples of this. I don't think that there are that many that are really orbicular, but they're really, really fat guys here. And then the last one is subulate, which means shaped like an awl. Um, it's like it's very close to linear lanceolate, um, but it tapers to a very fine point. And maybe we're splitting hairs here because linear lanceolate is very close to this. So that is the end of that.